Hello and welcome back to another B.Hooked crochet video tutorial. I'm your host Brittany, and today I'm going to be discussing how to do the textured wave stitch. This is a free pattern that's available up on my blog, and I'll include that link in the description below. For this tutorial, you will need any size yarn. You could use a worsted weight, which is what I will be using for the demonstration, but you could also do this with a chunky weight or even a lighter weight yarn. And you'll want to use a hook that coordinates. So as I said, I'm going to be using a worsted weight, and I am going to be using a 5.5mm crochet hook, and I'm going to be using Caron's Simply Soft yarn in the color Sunshine. So go ahead and grab your supplies and we'll get started. One thing I would like to note is that the textured wave stitch is not reversible. So what you see here is the correct side, and if you flip it over, you'll see something a little bit different on the back. So you might want to keep that in mind when you're deciding a project for this stitch. Something I've used it for in the past was I made like a clutch, small handbag type purse, and I had the inside of that lined, so you couldn't actually see the wrong side. But the back side doesn't look bad itself. It's textured and pretty cool in itself, so you might actually like its appearance. To get started with the textured wave stitch, you just want to start out with a slip knot. So to make a slip knot, wrap the yarn around your finger twice, coming towards you. Pull the back strand over the front and pull that front strand up and over your finger. Now go ahead and insert your hook into that loop and pull your working yarn to tighten it up. And this pattern, I would recommend you follow along with the pattern as you watch this video. It's pretty easy to get lost within this stitch, or at least it was for me. I actually, in making this swatch, got a little off track because I was distracted by other things as I was working, and it's really easy to get yourself thrown off by one row, and from there it's actually pretty difficult to come back and try to figure it out. So I would recommend going to the link and pull up the pattern and follow along. So the pattern calls for you to chain a multiple of 10 plus 6. So what you want to do is basically count in groups of 10. And for this swatch, I did basically 3 repeats. For this swatch, I'm going to do a little bit smaller one. I'm going to do 2 repeats. So I'm going to chain, and I'm going to count in groups of 10. So I've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's one set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That is 2 sets. And from here, since I have basically gotten it as wide as I want to, I'm going to go ahead and add that plus 6. So I'm going to just chain an additional 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this pattern utilizes 2 stitches. You're just going to use the slip stitch and the half double crochet. And I will go over both of those just in case you're brand new and you're unfamiliar with them. Now the very next thing the pattern says to do is starting row 1, if you're following along, is that we need to slip stitch in the second chain from the hook. So this loop on your hook never counts as a chain. This right here is your first chain, and this right here is your second chain. So we're going to slip stitch into that second chain. Now to do a slip stitch, you just want to insert your hook into the chain, and you want to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you want to pull that same loop through the loop on your hook. That's 1. We need a total of 5 of these. It says slip stitch into the second chain from the hook and in each of the next 4 stitches. So that's a total of 5. So go ahead and slip stitch into the next chain. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now the next thing the pattern says to do is to half double crochet into each of the next 5 chains. So to do a half double crochet, we are just going to yarn over, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over and draw up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pull through all 3. And we want to do that a total of 5 times. That was 1. Now 2. 3. 4. And 5. So we've got 5 half double. 2, 3, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm just counting to double check as we go along. This foundation row is the most important row, and if this is off, then your whole pattern is going to be off. So you do want to be careful with counting your stitches. Okay, the pattern says next that we need to slip stitch into each of the next 5 chains, and that's our repeat. We're going to do 5 slip stitches, 5 half double crochets, and just keep repeating that sequence. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, I'm going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And we're going to half double into the next 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and if we've done everything correct, we should have 5 left. 4, 5, which I do. So on these last 5, I'm going to slip stitch. And with that, we've reached the end. Following along with the pattern, we want to go to row number 2. Now, row number 2 says the remainder of the piece is worked in the back loops only. Okay, and let me just take a second to explain what that is, just in case you're brand new. So, as you can see, when you turn your chain up on the top, every stitch looks like a V. So you can see basically I've got a V here, and those are all individual stitches. And when I turn the work facing the direction that I'm going to be working, since crocheting we're always working from right to left, when I flip it over so that I can work from right to left, I'm going to locate the back loop by just kind of turning it up, and I'm going to work in that back loop only of that V. So let me just pull out my hook so I can give you a better idea of what's going on. So I'm going to be working in this loop right here all the time from now on. Okay, and sometimes on the slip stitches it likes to turn a little bit, so they're kind of hard to work into, and this row in particular, it's a little bit harder to get this row started, but once you've got the piece going after this point, it's much easier. So now what we want to do for this row is slip stitch into each of the first 5 stitches, half double crochet into each of the next 5s, and then we're going to slip stitch into each of the next 5. So that's basically our repeat throughout the entire pattern. And so what we want to do, since we're slip stitching, we're not chaining any at all, because a slip stitch essentially is a flat stitch, but we do want to work in this very first V right here. And so this is, like I said, the part that's a little bit difficult to get it started. Just wiggle your hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through the loop on your hook. So that's your first slip stitch. And then from here, I'm going to work into the next one, back loop only. That's my second slip stitch. Now into the third. The fourth. And the fifth one. Okay, something you want to keep in mind too that I kind of learned the hard way is you want to make your slip stitches a little bit loose, because otherwise it's really hard to get your hook into that back loop only. So as I said, from here what we need to do now is 5 half double crochet into the back loops only. And on these half doubles, see how it's so much easier to see the back loops? So I'm basically just going to yarn over, insert my hook into that back loop only, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through all 3. So that's the first one. I'm just going to continue on. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now we want to do 5 slip stitches again. So insert your hook into that first chain there, the back loop, yarn over, pull through, this is 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now 5 more half doubles, do the back loop, okay, and now we need to end off with 5 slip stitches. So go into that first one, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can kind of see the last one will sometimes, actually right here it's showing up pretty well. Sometimes your last stitch there, the back V will kind of hide itself. So you just want to make sure you get that back loop only. And there we go, that's the end of row 2. Following along with the pattern, row 3 says that we need to chain 2. And then we're going to turn our work. And now it says that we need to half double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. And the reason why we're only going into the next 4 stitches is because this chaining of 2 is counting as a half double crochet. So what you want to do is you want to turn your work kind of up so you get a feel for what chain you need to work into. And if you need a little bit of help, you can actually go ahead and count. So if I say, well, this one looks like the next stitch right here that I need to go into. So if I put 1 here, that'll be a total of 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is exactly what I need it to be. So I am going to yarn over, insert my hook into the very next stitch. I'm having a little bit of problems getting it in there. Okay, so yarning over and pull through all 3. So there I've technically got 2. Working into the next, that's 3. 4, and 5. Okay, and now The pattern says that we need to slip stitch into each of the next 5 half double crochet. So my first one's right here. I'm just going to insert my hook into the back loop and start slip stitching across. Okay, I've got 5 slip stitches. Now I'm going to go on to make 5 half double crochet. Okay, got 5 half double. Now I'm going to switch back and do 5 slip stitches. Alright, and last I'm going to put 5 half double crochets into the last 5 stitches. And these last 2 are always tricky to find. The very last one, you can kind of see this loop is sort of sticking up here. That's actually part of my last stitch. So if yours looks a little bit crazy like this, it's because the last row that we had was a slip stitch where we ended here. So we want to basically just turn it up, and you can see I've got this piece that's going this way. I'm just going to insert my hook right under there. We are half doubling, so just go through, and there we go. Now we've completed row 3, and as you can see, the pattern is starting to take shape now. We're actually looking at the right side here. Moving on with row 4, pattern says we need to chain 2, and we're going to turn our work. And we need to put 5 half double crochets across, but since this first one is going to count as 1 again, so we need to half double crochet into the next 4. So showing you from this angle, I'm going into this stitch here, yarn over, and pulling through all 3. So I've got 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the next 5. Okay, I've got 5. Now I'm going to put 5 half double crochets into the next stitches. Okay, Need to get a little bit more yarn off camera and go ahead and continue on. The next thing that we're going to do is to put 5 slip stitches into the next 5 stitches. There we go, and we're going to end off this row with half double crocheting into the last 5 stitches. Okay, and up to this point I've got 4, and since this row right here we started off with a chain 2 and that was counting as a half double crochet, don't forget that you need to put a stitch into this chain space right here. If you turn it over where I like to work, so you can see right here, this loop is part of the last stitch that I just went into, and if you look here you can see I've got what looks like a little V right here. That's one of my chains. So I'm going to go into this back loop right here. Okay, so put my hook back in, and then I'm just going to insert my hook into that back loop of the chain and half double. Now if you don't watch out for this, your piece will start to get shorter and shorter on the edges. Okay, moving on to row 5. From here we need to slip stitch into each of the first 5 half double crochet. So we're actually going to go in this stitch right next to the hook. That's going to be our first slip stitch. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and then we are going to half double crochet into each of the next 5 slip stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, guess what comes next? We are going to slip stitch into the next 5 stitches, just like we've been doing. Alright, 5 half double into the next 5 stitches. And 5. Okay, and in the last 5 stitches I'm going to slip stitch. 2, 3, 4, and this last one you can kind of see if you flip it over. See the V right there? Go into this back loop. The edges are always a little bit tricky to get the hang of. If you're new, I swear it'll come to you one day. It'll just be like a light bulb goes off. Okay, and so that's the end of the repeat for this pattern. So now the pattern says that we should repeat rows 2 through 5 for the pattern to desired length. Okay, row 4 says to chain 2. So that means we know we're going to start off by half doubling. That counts as a stitch. We're going to skip this stitch, therefore, so we are going to half double into the next one. And that counts as 2. 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to slip stitch into the next 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Half double 5. Okay, go ahead and continue on. We just ended with 5 half doubles, so we're going to slip stitch 5. Alright, we're going to do 5 half doubles in the last 5 stitches. Okay, turning it over so I can see my last stitch there. Go into that back loop. There we go. Now with that, we've finished row 4. So we have one more row in this repeat. We're going to go on to row 5, and it says that we need to slip stitch into each of the first 5 half double crochet. So same as before, we're going to go into the first stitch right next to our hook and slip stitch in there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we want to half double into the next 5. Okay, slip stitch into the next 5. Half double into the next 5. And slip stitch into the last 5. Turning my work up to the front so I can see that last stitch there. Okay, there we go. Now we've done 2 pattern repeats, and as you can see, basically we end up with, you know, what looks like 2 complete rows and 1 incomplete. So you want to gauge what the appearance looks like based on where you stop. So from here, I would go on with one other row. Let me show you here what I did with this test swatch here. So basically here what we've ended up with is, you know, you can put it basically side by side in there, see how it matches. And I went on one more row to get the, you know, basically to finish off this wave section. So you can kind of use your own judgment and see, you know, if you like the way it looks here because it is a little bit flatter, and that's fine. I feel like it looks closer to, you know, basically the bottom here, and that's why I went on one more row. and that was row 2. So basically it will say, you know, at the end of last row, do not turn, fasten off. You'll see that in your pattern. Once you've made your piece the desired length, all you're going to do is simply cut off your yarn, and you're just going to bind off. So what I do is just pull the tail through the loop on my hook, and then you can weave in your ends. Now there's quite a few dense sections here on the back, so it's really easy to hide your tail ends. With that, that concludes this video tutorial on the textured wave stitch. On behalf of B.Hooked Crochet, I'm your host Brittany, and we'll see you next time.